Did you believe me when I said I was tired, even 18 months postpartum? My husband Louben answers that question today. But before we jump back into that conversation, I want to show you something important because while we're reflecting on those early postpartum days, I'm not in that place anymore. And the difference between then and now matters. If you're new here, I'm Sarah. I'm a personal trainer and nutrition and health coach who lost 65 pounds and maintained that weight loss for well over a decade until postpartum changed the rules. Today, I'm taking you behind the scenes and giving you a look at 20 months postpartum. This is 2 months after I got lab work done, I got a DEXA scan, and an RMR test, all of which helped me set the stage for the energy and the strength that I have today. Now, we're going to revisit the conversation I had with my husband, Louben, that we left off with in the previous episode. I'll link that below. But before we get to that, we're going to dive into the nutrition and the fitness that I implemented during month 2 of my comeback plan. Now, at 18 months postpartum, I was drinking anywhere between 2 to 4 cups of coffee per day. And of course, I would add some cream and sugar. So that would add up. But also, in an attempt to energize myself, I was actually doing the opposite. I was just becoming more and more tired and more reliant on this substance, so to say. But when month 2 hit, after I got my all of my testing done, I made one key change to my mornings, and that was not waking up and getting coffee right away. I would actually eat breakfast first, and then I would wait a little bit before having my coffee. Now, the reason I did this is because caffeine can interfere with just nutritional absorption. And I didn't want that because of my lower vitamin D, my iron, my B vitamins, all of that. So I decided to hold off on having coffee first thing. I also decided to do this because coffee will spike your cortisol early in the morning, especially if you don't have something on your stomach first. And it can also blunt your appetite signals. So by eating first, I was able to sustain or stabilize my blood sugar, which then gave my body actual fuel. And then coffee became more support and not survival. With that, my breakfast is usually consisted of an egg because I was getting that vitamin D. Plus, I would add egg whites just to, make it a little bit larger of a meal. I would add spinach and then I'd put it on a high fiber wrap or sourdough toast. I would have Greek yogurt some mornings with berries and granola with chia seeds. I would have overnight oats or oats overnight is a product I like. It's not sponsored by the way, but something like that that I knew was very fibrous, had a good amount of protein, and was simple enough to stay consistent with. Next comes lunch. Lunch was pretty predictable in the sense of I would usually have dinner leftovers, or I had my go-to list of restaurants that I would go to for my meals. When I talk restaurants, I'm not talking about fast food, which is what I would consider the McDonald's, the Burger Kings, the Wendy's, like those types of restaurants. I'm talking about restaurants as in fast food, Chipotle, Potbellies, Meze, Noodles and Company, things like that. And I would often rely on like a Chipotle bowl where I would get rice, beans, fajita veggies, corn, salsa, guac, lettuce, and that would become a very well-balanced meal for me. Or I would rely on something like a Potbelly's Mediterranean sandwich, hold the chicken and cheese. But I would get that, and it would be a very fiber dense meal that was also very satiating. Then dinner centered around more fish, a lot of salmon I was eating. With that, if I wasn't having kind of a protein source, a grain and vegetable, I would make a very plant forward recipe from my website And with this, I knew I was hitting my fiber goals. And then if I felt like I needed to add more protein in it, then I would add a protein item on the side, making sure that these meals were very well balanced, but also they were satiating. Throughout this time, my calories actually went up a little bit from that first month of tracking. So my calories kind of landed between the 1650 mark and 1900 calories. Protein was between 80 and 100 grams per day. Fiber was between 30 and 50 grams per day. So pretty in line with that first month. And then the holidays hit. And to be honest, I actually stopped tracking during this time because it just wasn't feasible. I I was doing life. And not that I wasn't doing it before, but there were a lot more events, a lot more social outings, and just things eh, holiday focus that were kind of taking over and taking up more time. And so, because I already had a structure in place of how my meals were built and how much protein I wanted to hit, how much fiber I wanted to hit, that's what I focused on during that time so that I could stop tracking. And I felt very comfortable doing that. Now, when it came to the training aspect of things, I actually kept the same structure in the sense of I still lifted 3 days per week. So there was a lower body day, an upper body day, and then a full body day. Every session would include core and also some Tabata training. But while that first month of workouts was really a reintroduction to getting my body used to those movements again and building a foundation. Month two was really focused on building the strength above that foundation. So that meant heavier loads. It meant more advanced unilateral work. It meant stronger trunk stability. And along with that, I was like, you know what? I'm doing 3 days of lifting per week. There's one day that I'm taking a rest day. Another day is more focused on mobility, flexibility. So I would stay loose after these workouts. But then there was another day or another 2 days where I'm like, I could add something in there and I didn't want it to be lifting. So I'm like, maybe we can focus on the cardiovascular aspect of things here. So this is where I was looking at my step count throughout the day. And in that first month, it was more so hitting around the 5,000 mark. And then every month after that, it would increase by like 1,000 steps. So I went from like 5,000 steps in like month one, step or month two was more of like the 6 to 7,000, and then going up to 8 or 9,000 with the lifting and with the step count, like everything was running really smoothly. And I was able to maintain all of this for 5 months. And I only missed two workouts, which I'm really, really proud of because that consistency, it was really building strength. I actually told my physical therapist, I told them that I wanted to work towards being able to do a pull up, which is just insane to think about that at 18 months postpartum, I could barely get it together. And then at 20 months postpartum, 21 months postpartum, I was talking about wanting to do a pull up. Now, none of this rebuilding would have been possible without the help of Louben. And last episode, we had focused on those early postpartum days, all the way up until 18 months postpartum. We talked about the sleep deprivation, the independence, and the moments that I tapped out. And me even asking if he believed me when I said I was tired 18 months postpartum. And I just want to say what's really powerful about having this conversation now, nearly 2 years postpartum, is that I'm not in survival mode anymore. I can look back with clarity, and I know that my nutrition and my fitness structure and plans would not have happened without our partnership, without our shifting schedules, without communicating better, without asking for help. And I know now that structure only works when your life supports it. So let's dive back in to part two of my conversation with Louben. I think I would tell you a lot of the times that I was tired And there's no like right or wrong answer here, but like, I guess, did you believe me?
Yeah, that I never doubted because, you know, I feel like I was around for most of it. I can, and I've experienced her crying, not sleeping well, things like that. We both pitching in. So yeah, I knew you were exhausted at times and not just tired, exhausted. And because even now she sleeps, maybe 1 to 2 hours, right? We both thought, at least I thought going into it was that, when they take a nap, you have time to, you have free time, which really you don't because when you're exhausted like that, which I think you've battled with or myself a little bit with the tiredness, do you take a nap or do you do something productive or something that you need to do? Because if you take a nap, then by the time they'll wake up, you get nothing done. But if you do something, where you're being productive, then you're not giving yourself that self-care.
I mean, so I had a few different bouts of physical therapy. So it was for the pelvic floor initially, and then it was for an elevated rib, all all due to Ren, so to say. But and then it was the mental health therapy. But do you think there was like a particular time where like you noticed like, huh, maybe she should get some help versus, especially with the mental health therapy? We obviously like we don't, I wouldn't say we like fight, we don't really, right? We're very like respectful to one another. But I think there were times that I can remember that I would lose my patience or that I was a little more hot-headed, so to say. Like, were there particular times that you remember and you're like, well, maybe you should seek out someone to like talk to?
Yeah, I don't remember it as thoroughly anymore, obviously, because so much has changed. But I think I do remember kind of like what you mentioned, that there were times I felt like, we do have a really good relationship. We're very respectful to each other. Sometimes I feel like, you will lose it a little bit as far as like kind of a little bit more out of character, like in the way that you talk to me and things like that.
I don't know. How did you feel like you could support me when I was like really struggling?
I think what I tried to do for the most part was if I noticed the baby was crying more than usual, especially early on when we were taking shifts or whatever, or you were taking most of the shifts, like getting up with you when I could, right? I worked pretty early in the morning at 6 a.m., but whenever I could, if I noticed, okay, she was crying longer than usual, like me just getting up to see like how I can be of help or support you.
Because I just remember like in especially in those early stages, like I feel like there was a lot of resentment. Not that I wanted to like feel that way, but you had the freedom, so to say, to like go to work and leave the house. And but I do want to know mentally what were you going through during that time?
I think just for me, it was primarily just being tired and then just at time just not knowing exactly how maybe to support you. There was a time we were just taking I think we are both getting up the same night. Like you will go in first, then I will go in, then you'll go in all within the same night. So then none of us really got good sleep that night. Whereas eventually we did where you took a night, I took a night. I felt like that was better because at least we will get one decent day of sleep kind of thing.
I will insert that while I was nursing, which I nursed Ren for 6 months, but like on those nights when like I had like a full night's rest, so to say, like I was getting up every 3 hours to pump in order to keep my supply up. So I think that was another thing, like, and I don't know if you knew that I was still like getting up in the middle of the night to do those things. Now it wasn't, I didn't have to worry about trying to get Ren back to sleep after that. So that was, much easier on me, but still it was depleting in the sense of like there was no restful time of where I was getting these stretches of sleep that were like just really beneficial.
As much as sometimes we want to think people should know what to do or read our mind, I think the best thing you can do is just communicate it exactly what you need. Or even if you can't verbalize it, just say, I need help. Like just literally just almost kind of like a cry for help. Then the person can say, okay, what can I do? Maybe help you find a way to communicate it is what it is that you need help with.
In those early days, I think that is something that's really hard to do because the mental and physical load of everything is just so much, like dealing with my own recovery, but also dealing with a newborn. But yeah, what advice would you give to fathers or just partners in general, like going through the early
Yeah,
postpartum days?
I think as a husband or as a man, you know, there's some stuff we can never relate to because we obviously don't go through exactly what, you know, a woman goes through. But, you know, for me, I did watch a decent amount of YouTube videos about, you know, couples that did go through a similar situation. You know, as a man or as a father or dad, you need to, you know, be involved. That's really it. Just be involved and do what you can and ask how you can help.
I remember the day we were leaving the hospital and you
Mhm.
wanted to be really helpful and Ren
Mhm.
had gone to the bathroom and her diaper needed changed and you were like, I'm gonna do it. And you know, you did it, but you also like had to take her clothes off and you ended up throwing her clothes away with the diaper.
Mhm.
It was like freezing cold out. I don't know, were you like nervous in that time? I know like I grew up in my mom ran a daycare growing up. So like
Mhm.
I was used to like babies and things like that. Obviously this,
I
might have been
mean,
a little bit different.
yeah, remember her clothes are tiny. I think it just got bundled up with the diapers somehow. I don't remember being nervous because I've changed babies' diapers before. So, I mean, she was 5 pounds. Was it
I know.
7 ounces or
I know.
9 ounces?
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 pound 9 ounces. So I think when the balling up her diaper, and you know, I use a lot of wipes. I think it just all got caught up in there.
We're like, where's her outfit? And we found it in the trash. Um, when it came to like routines, I think that's something that I was all for in creating a routine and making sure that Ren was in a routine so that she was more predictable, so to say. And I will say, I think that's something that you kind of fought me on early on. And looking back, like, what would you say to all of that?
I think I was not necessarily reluctant to routine. I I wanted us to be able to be flexible as well in some ways, but I know routines have the huge advantage. The baby kind of get conditioned, they know what to expect. But I just also wanted to be like, okay, well, we also need to live our lives as well. So it's kind of more that like we can't just do everything just for the baby. We need to make sure we do some stuff for ourselves and take care of ourselves as well.
And I think, there was some pushback there because I think we are so independent that we're so used to doing just our thing and then coming together at the end of the day. And then all of a sudden we have, a new human in the mix who's crying and needing our full on attention. I don't know. I know like the routine, that was something that I remember being really hard to try to. I know you committed to it like eventually, but it was really hard initially, trying to get you to do that. And I think because you're like, oh, kids are resilient. They're resilient. And yeah, they are resilient. But at the same time, I'm like, I know I needed routine just so that I could stay sane. I want to shift to us because I think that's something that also kind of, it's all about the baby. I feel like initially in those early postpartum days. So I don't know how to word this. You wanted a baby like super soon after having Ren.
I just I still want a baby now. But yeah, I wanted them to be close in age. I didn't want a baby 3 months after she was born because I know it doesn't work that way and we had a lot to learn. But yeah, I did want a baby within the 1 to 2 years after she was born because I like them to be somewhat close in age. But at the same time, I know I didn't go through the entire process in the sense of carrying her for, you know, those months and, you know, the things that after happens right after as well.
I still get the question, oh, are you going to have another? Are you going to have another? And to be honest, like the idea sounds intriguing, but also it's like I'm still trying to find my foundation again, even 23 months postpartum, 22, 23 months postpartum. And I think that's something that I had to really get you on board with as well, because it was kind of like, oh, like I think we should have another kid. Like there was this timeline to do it. With that, in order to have a kid, you have to have sex.
That's what they say.
But I mean, like, I like this might be getting into like nitty-gritty details, but we literally couldn't do anything for 6 months, like postpartum. I don't know if other partners, other fathers like experience that with the mothers of their children. But for us, that was like really real, just because my recovery was not what I think either of us anticipated.
That just was the situation, that was the fact. I think you just kind of, you know, whatever life throws at you, you just kind of go through it. That's kind of was my thought process on it. It was nothing that you could have done. It was just part of the recovery process. And that's just what it took. You needed to heal, you needed to recover. So obviously, I respect that. And it's just what it was. I guess it was just black and white. They just could have happened. And, it is what it was kind of thing.
What advice would you give to couples, like, let's say they're going through a similar situation, like, in order to stay connected through it all? Like, what advice would you give them?
What do you mean by connected through it all?
Like, not physically, but like, but like on that emotional, mental level where like you are still, each other's biggest fans. Like, how do you stay connected through all of the chaos, so to say, of having a new baby?
Just trying to understand, obviously, especially if it's your first kid, it's new to both of you, right? So I think it's just more just being there, being present, and trying to be supportive in any way that you can. We don't quite understand exactly what you ladies go through. So I think it's just more just try and be there emotionally. And I think just telling each other that you appreciate each other, especially the husband reassuring their wife. But still being affectionate. You can be affectionate without having sex, obviously. So, we used to have this thing for ourselves that we did used to do our 15-second hugs. So even now we don't necessarily count 15 seconds, but that was even before baby. We used to do these long hugs and stuff like that. I think just keep caring for one another. I think that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, I would agree. Is there anything else you want to say about the early postpartum days from like your perspective?
I didn't know exactly what to expect, but I know, okay, if we're talking about this, this is really enough that, this is important. Some women go through, the depression stage or hating the baby. I was kind of looking out for some of that. It seems like, at least from my point of view, I don't remember you hating her to where I felt like, okay, she
Like,
doesn't feel safe around you kind of
yeah.
thing. But I knew, oh, that was a possibility. So I was kind of just trying to be there. That's why whenever I was listening throughout the night to see, okay, is she overly frustrated that I need to step over kind of thing? They talk about the shaking baby syndrome, right? So a lot of people, if you've never had kids or you haven't gone through this, you might think like, how could somebody do that, right? But after hearing them cry for 6, 7 hours, it's not being malicious. You might think of it, right? We have these intrusive thoughts like, just be quiet or just shut up, right? So just knowing that, okay, all that can happen. There's a possibility. So just me, I was just trying to listen up for some of those signs to make sure you did not get to that point. That was kind of what I was trying to do.
I remember one night in particular that I did come and get you. It was like, not that you really think about it, but if you're like bouncing your kid, like it gets very easy to start going faster and faster and
Mhm.
faster until you realize, okay, I need to stop and I need to put her down or him down and I need to like leave the room. I do remember one of those nights happening. Obviously, it didn't go anywhere like too extreme, but it could have had I not known that it could happen and stop myself from like making it happen, so to say.
And I think just for men in general, I think men should be way more involved with the babies and kids in general through taking care of them. Luckily, we'll both work for ourselves. There's some advantage of that. I can be home a little bit more now, especially. But I think, in society, I think a lot of it is just like the woman took care of the baby all by themselves kind of thing. And I could have been maybe even more helpful, but I do appreciate the little time that I was there. I was able to bond with her, spend time with her, hold her, and things like that.
And I think it was obviously a little bit different for us because I was working on top of like trying to care for Ren in those first like 3 months until we did get help. And then that was a significant like relief in the sense of just having someone to rely on to come in and to help us out with everything. Anything else you want to add?
Yes, I guess that's more of a question for you, Sarah. What are your top three favorite things about being a mom?
From like early postpartum days or now?
Between now and then, anything.
Because real fast, like what you were saying, like you don't remember me being malicious. I think a lot of times I deflect with like humor. And I remember calling Ren like the devil in diapers. And she just cried so often and so much. She had such personality from early on. Anyway, the my three favorite things that I love about being a mom, I love watching the world like through her eyes. I love to see her exploring and just, being a kid again, getting on the floor and crawling around, acting like a dog with her. Like it's just, you know, I love the hugs. I love when I hear her say "Mama," like and scream my name. But a lot of that, honestly, like I feel like hasn't like didn't come in that first year. And that was like really, really hard. It was hard to find like a lot of things that I loved about being a mom, like initially, other than like there were moments of like her smiling in like her sleep and I would sing to her and like I love those moments. I still love those moments of like snuggling with her. But now that she is able to communicate more, I don't know. I love this season that we're in. I really do. And I'm starting to find my own ground again.
Yeah.
So that's been helpful. What about you? What are three things you love about being a papa?
Favorite things about being a papa. Early on, I don't know if you remember, I enjoyed my naps with her. So used to let her sleep on my chest. We have a lot of great photos of her just sleeping on my chest, on my arms. Because like I said, there were times I was tired too. So it's like, well, this is good to get a little cat nap myself. So she doesn't do that as much anymore. She is
Not at
not good at
all.
snuggling right now. And right now I like her curiosity, just her testing, like I know I shouldn't be doing this, like, and she's giving you a little smirk while she tries it, right? Oh, I love when
For
she was
her.
going through the phase. You remember she'll close her eyes. You'll say, "Don't touch the tree." She'll close her eyes, and she still touches the tree. And then now, just I love singing with her into her. A lot of time I sing with her. She's dancing and spinning. So, and I feel like she makes me a little bit even a happier person. I think I've always been a positive person, but I feel like I'm even a happier person because of her. Because, kids naturally, I feel like bring out especially when they're healthy and, they bring out a fun side of you because, they want to play. A little kid hands you the play phone, you answer the phone, no matter how tough of a person you are.
She
Yeah, I enjoy
definitely
all that.
does bring a lot of joy to our lives and to our family members' lives. And yeah, she is a joy to be around. Okay.
Yes.
Well, babe, thanks for joining me and giving people a little bit of a insight to what our early postpartum days looked like. I feel like there's so many more layers to it, but this is what we could kind of cover for today.
Yes. Thank you for having me, my love.
I love
Yeah.
you. Mwah. Bye. In the next episode, I am taking you down a road I didn't think I would be traveling again. After having structure, having momentum, having consistency, something happened that forced me to reassess it all. Now, if you're in the same season, whether you are 3 months postpartum, 18 months postpartum, or nearly 2 years in, you're not behind, you're not weak, and you're not alone. If any of this has resonated with you, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Here, we're going to focus on the nutrition, the mindset, and the movement, not as pressure, but as tools so that you can feel strong, bold, and healthy. I'll see you next time.